Good. So a very warm welcome, everyone who's here. I think looking at the number of us here, most of you, obviously, you managed to get online if you're here. If you tried to get online and you couldn't make it today, and so you're catching up on YouTube, I'm sorry, something's gone wrong with today's link, and I don't know if we can fix that just now, and let's try and get it fixed for next week. And of course, a very warm welcome to all of those who are joining us on YouTube. Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are. So today is the 11th or the 12th session in the Mahamudra prayer. And so we are chugging along. And probably the problem came because I originally hoped to complete this course. Or let's say I took the mad risk of thinking I could. It's 12. Thanks, Neil. Yes, welcome. This is session 12. And thinking we could do it in 12 sessions. I thought 24 verses, 2 verses a session, 24 sessions. And of course, no way. I could manage that. And now I'm hoping to finish by Christmas. We had in the town, this town here in France, in the old days when most people had wind-up watches and wind-up alarm clocks, a clock fixer, clock repairman. He was Vietnamese in a tiny little shop in the heart of the town. And he always used to say, peut-être mardi, maybe Tuesday. So you went back next Tuesday and wasn't quite done yet. Peut-être mardi, maybe next Tuesday. So peut-être mardi has become a kind of a saying. So maybe by Christmas we'll have finished this course. Anyway, so that's a welcome. Today there's a welcome with a very, very sad news. I'm not sure how to share it with you, or the right words, but our Saturday morning Sangha is a beautiful community, and I know quite a lot of us, quite a lot of you, of us, get a lot out of our coming together here on Saturday. And one of our regular, very, very devoted members died this week. It was Ini Kafiludi. And so she had an accident and she's no longer with us. And at the end of this session, we'll spend a moment dedicating the session to her. So that's, for me, that's a loss. And I hope that, of course, for her, now she's left this life with all of its trouble, then I hope her ongoing journey into the beauty of mind will be wonderful. And we'll dedicate, I'll say more at the end. So anyway, let's start with our own very special Bodhisattva motivation, turning our hearts in love and in care to all our fellow beings, and including especially those with whom we have either karma connections or dharma connections, and doing it with a love that is unconditional as you can make it, and with a very, very happy mind, because we come into this life, and whatever dharma we can retrieve on our journey through this life is the most precious gift. It says dharma is your best friend for the next life. It's really true. So anyway, Sonje chodan soji chonam la jancho bado dane chapsanche dagi jinso jipe sonam ji rola penchura sonje droparashu Sonje chodan soji chonam la jancho bado dane chapsanche Dagi jinso jipe sanamji rola penchara sanje ruparan Sanje chodan soji chonamla jancho pado dane chapsanche. Dagi jinso jipe sanamji rola penchara sanje ruparan Samchen tamche dewa dang dewe jodang den para joche. Dongal dang dongal ji jodang tralwara joche. Dongal mepe dewa dampa dang men tralwara joche. Yerin chadan ne tang tralwe, tanyom chempo la ne para joche. Doji changchen talo narodang mapa mula choche kampupa, tu somshe cha kunchen kamapa, cheshi chungje jupa zenamdang. Drita sasung paden drupa so zavlam chaja chela nyanipe, nyame droganda po kajula, sol wan depso kajula manam, chupa zenanam tara jinchelo, sheno gomji kampara sumpa shin zeno, kunla chakshen me padang, sede dota chopi gomchen la, nyeko shenpa me para jinchelo. Mogu gomchi gore sumpa shen mga tejo jipil amala jundo sowan tepe gomchen la jomen mogu jewara jinche lo yengme gomchi ngashira sumpa shen kangsha tope ngu summa de macha dekra jope gomchen la gomcha lo dan chalware jinche lo namto ngu chukra sumpa shen chiang mayen chiang chawana mangaro pa chawe gomchen la Kode yerme topara jinjino. Deya ta shame shamawati shamita shadru. Am kure marajite karota ke ore tojuwati oloyane bishuda. Nyamale malapana ye kukure kaka grase grasana o muki para muki a muki sham damane sawa grahabanda nane gredava sawa bhava pravadina vimukta mara pasha savitva buddha mudran gatita sava mare butsarita Pare shuddhe pega shantu sava marakama. Halen sawe lama rinpoche dagye chawara pende den shula. Kadrin chenpo gone jesonte kuson tuje madrop sadhu. So here we are in our dance with the Mahamudra prayer. A few steps forward, a few steps back. Nothing quite so dramatic as a tango, but nevertheless, we are moving forward into new thinking and then going back to refresh the old thinking. So we've left now the verses about view. This view, which is all important. If the view is not right, the meditation won't work. So we saw in those verses what we saw, and it gives us a conundrum that you won't solve intellectually. A penny won't drop because it's not that kind of a thing. As the years go by, as your practice evolves, and even if your practice evolves incredibly, and you go through the various stages of the path, it's something that will fall into place bit by bit. And it's the resolution of relative truth and ultimate truth. Of course, we hear about them from the start. At the start, it's very simple. Relative truth, samsara, stream of consciousness, everybody's story. Then the ultimate truth, Buddha mind never changes. The Buddha nature, the ultimate continuum, changeless nature that's there. And we digest the words. We start to put the ideas to the test in life, and in particular in our own practice. And as we've gone along through the last 6 sessions or so, talking about the view, I keep trying to say something a bit more about the ultimate and the relative, how they are they're not two things. But then again, they are two things. This is the problem. In one text, very famous, quoted by Maitreya and the Sangha, it says, there is not one atom in common between ultimate truth and relative truth. Not one atom between Buddha nature and everything most of us experience every single split second of the day, every day, our stream of consciousness. So in that sense, they're totally different. But then, what is this ultimate truth? And we've come back a few times to the ta, at the end of shunyata, at the end of dharmata. The ultimate truth is truth, the true nature of this relative reality. It's not an ultimate truth over there, separate. It's the real truth of this moment that we don't get because we are deluded. We are confused. So there are many classical examples for this, famous ones, a mirage, where it really looks like there's something over there and so on. Or a dream, where as long as we're dreaming, it's real. When you wake up, none of it was real. And while we're dreaming, we're by definition not awake, but the dreamer all the time is the real you. If you dreamt you were, what could you dream you were? A seahorse. Strange things. They don't really have arms and legs. They just kind of float, through the water like this. Imagine you dreaming you're a seahorse in some warm tropical water. And then you wake up and you're Ken. Where was Ken all that time? Aha, good question. But Ken was there all the time. But while you were the seahorse, you were the seahorse. It's the truth, the true nature of the same mind that was dreaming. So resolving this can only happen through meditation, no amount of blah, 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 or philosophy. There's lots there, tell you lots about it. Endless. But you'll only resolve the conundrum for yourself through meditation. So we're entering now in this section about, well, then how do you do it? How do we do not just any meditation? How do we do Mahamudra meditation? We have 7 verses on that. I did want to, before we plunge into the first of those verses, which is the overview that we already looked at a bit last time, I did want to highlight 2 things. One is because of this question of relative and ultimate, is that as long as there is the relative truth, and as long as that relative truth is samsara. Those last words is like writing a legal contract. They are chosen words. As long as there is this relative truth, one thing. And as long as that relative truth is samsara, second thing. Then we need relative practice. And the verses we're coming to will tell us very clearly about that. there can still be relative truth, relative manifestation. But if it's not getting us anymore and pulling us in, then it's not samsara. There can still be relative truth, manifestation, people, situations, good karma, bad karma, your own past karma, ripening into all sorts of things. That doesn't stop. But if you're no longer entangled, drawn in, caught up, then it's no longer samsara. So until it is no longer samsara, we need remedial methods to get us out of the grip of our habits and our habitual projections and assumptions, a dualistic mind. We need the relative methods. It's a very important point. You can't read a few things about Mahamudra or Dzogchen online and understand it with your intellect and then act like a crazy yogi for the rest of your life. You will be the greatest idiot on earth. And it's not me who says that, that's Saraha. And it's a big mistake. So we need compassion. And I mentioned last time, implicit to all these teachings, implicit to it, is feeling sick and fed up of samsara because there is such pain. It's such a waste of time. It is so horrible. And an understanding of karma and of this precious human life and of impermanence. That's implicit. And then giving rise to bodhicitta, having great love for all beings. Something Dugo Chensi Rinpoche says. I've got it to hand, just a second. Enlightenment will be ours when we are able to care for others as much as now we care for ourselves, and to ignore ourselves to the same extent that now we ignore others. I think that's very good. He puts both sides. Just now we ignore so much other beings and their suffering, and we care so much for ourselves. Of course, that's normal life in samsara. So when we care for others as much as ourselves, and we ignore ourselves as much as we ignore others, then enlightenment will be ours. So all of this, the Bodhisattva path, is implicit. So I wanted to say that, and I wanted to give another example, like a mirage, like a dream, or like hypnosis is another one. Another example which kind of leads us into Vajrayana thinking, that takes us back to the, how do you say, the ta, dhammata, shunyata, the truth, the true nature of what is going on and what our guru points out to us, the true nature. Now, this is quite a vivid example, and it's that of possession. Possession, spirit possession, demonic, not necessarily demonic, because demonic's kind of a worst case. There are all sorts of possession. Now, for whatever reason, somebody, let's say, inhabited by a spirit or possessed, it is actually possession, because while you are possessed, you're not yourself, but your speech and your body are used by an incoming force. Now, I've witnessed that. I've witnessed that in India. I've witnessed that in Africa. I've witnessed that in Scotland. It's very real, and it's not the sort of thing that somebody can fake. Sometimes it's incredibly vivid. And in fact, I can't say he was my first Dharma teacher, because I never received teachings from him. But my first monastic connection, let's say, was with the Nechung monastery in Dharamsala. And that's where the Nechung Rinpoche Nechung oracle is, the state oracle of Tibet. He was there. Now, of course, the one I knew was already not young. He's passed away, and there's been another one, I think even another one since. But he's a sweet little man who had lots of window boxes with flowers and plants. And so a lot of the time he's with his small watering can and looking after his plants. But then at least once a year, they dress him up. Now, even the dressing up has got lots of metal on it. It's a huge weight for somebody to carry. They dress him up and they ask him to give predictions for the coming year. And once he invites the spirit and it inhabits him, then it takes a few people to hold him, sort of keep him down. And he can stand up with all this heavy costume, no problem. And then he speaks with a very, very strange voice, and people have to get close and listen to this. He's a squeaky voice that talks like very different from him. And then when it's all finished, he's exhausted, as often happens. So I've seen various cases of possession, some as dramatic as that. But the real person goes, and then they're inhabited temporarily, interdependently, impermanently. So in Vajrayana, we talk about the 4 maras. Mara means evil spirit or harmful spirit. And sometimes we look at, they're called dut in Tibetan, mara, dut. Sometimes the dut are external ones in the world at large who get up to all sorts of mischief. But then we see inside us, the real dut inside ourselves is our own samsaric tendency, egotism and desire and so on. And as long as we've got that, then we're open to outer negative influence. So a lot of Vajrayana talk and Vajrayana practice is about overcoming the 4 main dut maras inside ourselves. So its view is that we are kind of possessed by samsaric habits, and our relative path is to get rid of them. So I just wanted to give that as, can you say, another example of a mind which is relatively overpowered by something, overtaken by something, temporarily. Every moment, unique, a new influence. So what is the dut, what is the mara inside us that enables, you know, there's an English expression, I don't know what possessed me. I don't know what possessed me. I don't know what got into me. We sometimes say that when it's quite vivid. And although we did it and we said it, it doesn't fit with our usual definition of me, the good person. So then we have to say, I don't know what got into me. It was your own bad habits. It's just you've got more bad habits than you think deep down. But anyway. Our desires, our need to be, just to be, to manifest, to be somebody, to be recognized, to have attention. And then our need to have this, that, and so on. Possesses us, takes us over again and again. So our meditation practice will be, in the light of the view, to know that's not the real me. Real me is good. Real me is Bodhisattva. Real me is Buddha. Kindness, generous, forbearing, immaculately behaved, serene, wise. So that's not the real us. So we need to look at the relative truth to find the true me. We need to look in the moment when there's anger, possessiveness, need, all those things that possess us. In the living moment of anger and so on in Mahamudra, then we need to look at it, not with an attitude. Of course, at first we need the attitude. That's not the real me. We need to look at it, but just to look at it, to try and find it, the anger, to feel it, to experience it directly, the desire, the need, the sadness, the self-pity, whatever it is. And when we try and find it, we don't find it. We find space, spaciousness. And if you are connected, then we feel our Guru's blessing. Now, the point I wanted to make in this first part is that it's really the interesting bit, so please listen well. We need to learn again and again to look directly into our relative reality in the way our Guru teaches us through meditation, to find the ultimate truth of it again and again and again and again. And with time, once we know how to see the Buddha nature of our mind, which is not something else but the truth of that moment, the other side of that moment. It will be of this moment and the next moment and the next moment, but every time you find the truth of anger, it's the pure changeless nature of mind. And then the next moment, the truth of desire, is the pure changeless nature of mind. We go back and back and back, and it's the same changeless Buddha nature. Relatively, it's different. It's this person, this bit of your life, that bit of your life, these things that come up on the cushion, these things that come up with your mother-in-law, whatever, relatively. But when we find the truth of it, each time, each moment, it's the same truth. It's serene. It's perfect. So then the moments of not leaving that deep truth to go into the next moment, but staying in that deep truth while the next moment comes and goes, because you're not possessed by it anymore. You're not inhabited by it anymore. It can't get you. It's like two sides of Velcro. You need two sides. One side's hooks, one side's loops. If all your loops are gone, the Velcro can't get you anymore. You can't be possessed. You can't be inhabited by your history. Gradually, the moments in the pure nature of mind, pure nature of each moment, which is described in Tibetan as soma. Soma means fresh each moment. It's not one thing. This is the verses we've been looking at. You can't say this is it. It's not one thing where you can just park yourself. It has to be freshly made each moment. It's like I make hummus. It goes off after 3 days. You have to make a fresh lot. With meditation, it needs to be the freshness of each moment, not something created by us as an idea of ultimate reality. But anyway, with time, that becomes something flips, and that becomes your default state. We call that first Bodhisattva level. So I wanted to say that because when that becomes the default state, even though it's the freshness of each moment, and it's new every moment, this conundrum of such a huge difference between relative reality and Buddha mind is solved. So we need to do it step by step. So now the verses tell us how to do that. So I'd like to read the verse that I gave you the transcription for last week. Verse 15. Not adulterating meditation with conceptual striving or mentally created meditation, unmoved by the winds of everyday business, knowing how to rest in the uncontrived, natural, spontaneous flow, the uncontrived, natural, spontaneous flow. May the practice of resting in mind's true nature be skillfully sustained. So, I'd like actually to read to you Tai Situpa's introduction to this verse. I can't do better than that as an introduction. So rather than just try and reproduce it with Ken Holmes' language, I'd just like to quote him. This is a very profound teaching about a particular kind of meditation, and one that could be applicable to any kind of meditation you're doing. Could be. However, if you take this too literally with respect to your present meditation method, you might get a little confused. He's so polite. You have to understand that Karmapa is writing about a very specific level of meditation. It is about resting in the nature of mind, observing the nature of mind, which is considered the highest aspect of Mahamudra meditation. So he is writing this verse according to that. If you're doing something that employs visualization, like prostrations, then you can also apply this, but not totally literally, because that is a slightly different approach from what he's describing here. So maybe we'll come back to that, but now we'll go from our present 12th Tai Situpa to the 8th Tai Situpa, and I have so many papers here. So I can't find it. But anyway, I know what he says. So the 8th Tai Situpa, at the end of his introduction, he says, this verse, it will be slightly, so this is the 8th Tai Situpa in his long and very, very technical, incredibly accurate and erudite commentary. He says, with this verse, it might be easier if we start with the second line. So what are we not tackling for the moment? Why are we going to line 2 and parking line 1? Line 1 is what the present Tai Situpa was talking about, a very profound teaching about a particular kind of meditation. You can apply it to other meditations, that will be wonderful. But we must know that, so it says, unspoiled by mentally contriving meditation. That's what we're parking for the moment. We'll come back to that. And it's why those of you who are registered for the course, I sent out this week's support document with the quotations, both from the VIIIth Tai Situpa and from Karmapa. So we're going to line 2. This is the easy bit, but is it? Is it? So I have to present this to you. It is traditionally the starting point, and it's very, very important. The problem is that traditionally was in Tibet, was in Mahamudra Tibet, was in hermitages, monasteries in sort of, with people who had all day to practice Dharma. And here I am talking to you. Nearly everyone here is not in that situation. But please appreciate, I have to start there and then unpack it a little bit differently. So it says, leaving worldly hustle and bustle. And it makes so much sense. We have this relative stream of consciousness that possesses us, that takes over. It's another word for possession, takes over. Our mind is overtaken by those poisons, jealousy, greed, whatever. So we need to get out. To start the process, it's traditionally very helpful to get away for some time from the triggers. It's not the answer. That's what I need to come to in unpacking this. But we need to start. We need to work with things which are so strong. Once you've meditated a bit, you'll know how strong your mind poisons and habits, whatever they are, like the habit of self-pity, for instance, and all the ways we define ourselves, our needs and so on. They're so strong. We need to give ourselves every help we can possibly find. So to go to retreat, whether it's a weekend, a week, a month, a few months, a few years, the rest of your life, is very helpful. The hustle and bustle terms, worldly life is like that. People are busying themselves with all sorts of stuff that they do, and they're very uncomfortable when they're not busy, in a way. But the hustle and bustle, the term, is the feeling of agitation. And that's how we get caught up. It goes so fast. Then this person is shouting at you, and then your kids need this, and then there's that, and then there's that. There are so many triggers for what we don't want anymore inside us. So to get away from the triggers, it says to go to a place where you can't hear worldly sounds anymore, the sounds of the village. I'm very lucky. I live in a house with a garden, quite a big garden. The neighbors only come from time to time, but when they do come, they're very loud. They are very loud, and they tend to drink a lot. So you can't not hear, even if you go in behind the double glazing, you can't not hear what's going on. And even when you try and ignore it with your mind, so you hear, your mind gets pulled in, possessed, taken over by it. So there is a lot of teaching in Mahamudra about the wonderful benefits of going to retreat. It's called isolation The word in Tibetan means you isolate yourself, insulate yourself. It's like when you've got rubber boots and you can't get an electric shock. The juice is there and you can touch it carefully. But if you've got thick enough rubber boots, you're not going to get a shock. So we need, this is the great benefit of isolation. People isolated themselves from worldly life, physical attraction, sex, possessions, all that kind of thing, by going to monasteries. But then monasteries have got their own busy life, and they've got people, and they've got people who've got egos and territories and so on. So people left monasteries to go to caves and forests and so on. And it's the time to share with you what I think are wonderful teachings from one of my pin-up lamas. He was one of Marpa's gurus, Maitrapa. In the text, Maitrapa is the one that Marpa got the direct Mahamudra transmissions from, rather than the tantric practice transmissions. And Maitrapa had several names, and one of them was Avadutipa. The Avaduti is the central channel. And so the thing with Avadutipa is that he learned first time. I am so admirative of him because I need to fall flat on my big nose so many times before I learn. He kind of saw things, witnessed things, when kind of, gosh, or these days you go, oh my God. He got the message and he changed his life accordingly. So in the scriptures and in the VIIIth Tai Situpa's commentary, then we get, I think it's the 6 examples of Avadutipa. There we go. So the verse that Maitrapa himself gave us, he said, the fair lady, the waterfowl, the snake, the hunter for game in the woods, the arrowsmith, and the maiden, these are my gurus. Surrender of hope, material wealth and home, meditation in remote forests, steady focus and solitude. These I discovered from these gurus. So 6 gurus, 6 lessons. And we'll go through them quickly. The first one is he was meditating in a forest and near the edge of a forest. And I think I've shared this before already in this course, but never mind. He sees a pretty young woman who comes and just in the edge of the forest. She doesn't see him and she's there, and as he observes, and he's probably pretty psychic as well, he picks up that she's waiting for somebody. She's got a meeting, a tryst with a lover, and so she's waiting and she keeps sort of prettying herself up, adjusting herself. And yeah, I think he maybe shared this one last week or the week before. I got the feeling it's very recent. Never mind, because people didn't have watches in those days, but however it was, time goes by. She's very nervous. It's obviously a new relationship with all of that nervousness of what will they think of me? Will I say the right thing? Will I be attractive in all sorts of ways? And there's all of that tension. And she waits and she waits, and the guy never shows. And she's obviously very upset at first, but then at the end, all of a sudden there's a huge relief, because somehow she feels, oh, and she realized how tense she was, how tense we get because of our expectation of the hope and fear of, will it work? Won't it work? Will I get this? Will this person be nice to me? All human relationships, material relationships, the tension we build up. And then in the end, she feels really relieved. So relieved, he feels the relief. It sort of comes over her like medicine. And she's been waiting so long, she just curls up on the mossy forest floor and has a good nap. Then she goes back home. So he says through her, he learnt the value of giving up hope. So please become a hopeless Buddhist. Hope and fear, the pair. As soon as you hope for something, you fear it might not happen. We don't need those. Then the second one is a waterfowl. Now, I've done some research, it didn't really work. I'll tell you the story, but I was trying to work out really and truly, what did Maitrippa see? So the story is a fish. Now, in the old language, they're not very accurate. When they say fish, it could be anything that's in the water. It could be a fish, it could be a dolphin, it could be a whale, it could be a crocodile. Hippopotami disappeared from India 60,000 years ago, so it wasn't those. But anyway, something in the water. So let's stay with the fish. So this thing is moving through the water. And there's a bird that enjoys getting a free ride. So the bird settles on the back of the fish and it's kind of enjoying it. Now, I've seen a film on YouTube of crows who enjoy sledding on snow-covered roofs in the winter. They find tin lids, a bit of Tupperware, and they slide down, and then they pick it up on their beak and they walk back up to the top. They put the bit of Tupperware on the roof and jump on it and slide. They are for sure birds enjoying having fun. So this bird's riding a fish. It's kind of our equivalent of surfing or sailboarding. Problem is, there are lots of other birds of the same species who are jealous. So they keep trying to knock it off the fish so they can have a go. And in the end, the bird gets so fed up of all this aggression because it's having a good time. They just say, oh, okay, flies off and says, you have a go then. So Maitrippa saw this and he said through that, he gave up material wealth. I just imagine it. This guy's a real yogi. He's looking at this fish, but he's not just seeing a fish and a bird. He's thinking, where's the enjoyment? And then what's the problem? It's that once you've got something, other people often are jealous. And they relate to you differently because you've got whatever it is. And even if you become a sweet, lovely Bodhisattva Buddhist, people may resent you because you're sweet, lovable, serene Bodhisattva Buddhist. They might feel it inside. And even though you're not haughty, their own, in the way people double project onto things, they might feel their own lack of that thing and feel inferior and then assume that you're haughty and so on. It's complicated. This is why we go to the forest. It's why you go to retreat. It's endless. So then the third thing he sees is a snake. It's a mummy snake who's given birth to lots and lots of little snakes. And they won't leave her alone. They just keep sliding all over her. And they're not, I don't think they're like human children. I don't know if they're asking for something, but she's just fed up with them. So at one point he sees this mother snake and lots of baby snakes. When she gets a chance, she suddenly slides off and leaves them to it and finds herself a really nice hole in the ground. So Maitrippa's seen this and he's thought, yeah, home life. All those things sliding over you all the time. And hole in the ground. And then the hunter, hunting for game in the woods. So when he's meditating in the forest, this one's over time. He's the guy who at first is coming in and hunting, probably with a bow and arrow, and killing things and taking them away. But at the same time, now whether it was himself or another one, this hunter sees a yogi meditating. And with time, the hunter starts coming over and asking the yogi for advice. And in the end, he gives up the hunting, starts sitting in the forest himself, and becomes a yogi. So that's the fourth example, I think. Yeah. And he says through that, he understood the value of meditating in forests. Because this is quite interesting. We don't have time to go to the interesting bit, but it's about teaching through example rather than teaching through words. And in Buddhist history, there's so many wonderful examples where the teaching that is received comes through somebody else's being, not through the words. And in fact, with the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, that level of teachings, the main way they do teach is by their serenity, their presence. So then the fifth example is an arrowsmith. So at one point he sees somebody who was making arrows and who's really making it so well by the side of a street somewhere. If you go to India, little shops by the side of streets or where people set up what they do. And the guy was so focused on his work and putting the feathers in and making the shaft smooth that a royal procession went by and he didn't even notice. So most other people, they're there and it's quite something when a small king goes by so nicely dressed and with the entourage and so on. This guy's so focused on the arrow making, he didn't even know it was happening. So through that, he learned about the value of steady focus. And the last example is a maiden. And she was, her job was grinding incense. So she had the ingredients and mortar and pestle and grinding away. Now she's grinding away, but she was an Indian lady with lots of bangles. And somehow, by the coincidence of when he happened to be watching, because she'd been doing this for a long time, she got so fed up with the bangles jangling. The bangles jangling, I like that she just in the end took off all the bangles so she could get on with her grinding without all this rattle and clatter. So through that, he understood the need to actually shed all this jangle and bangle and hustle and bustle and all the things. So that's the point. That's very helpful in the past, is what they nearly all did. And they went to the mountains and to the forests or to small ashrams and then focused 100% on meditation. These days, most of us here have busy lives. But remember, there is relative reality which manifests through the power of karma all the way up until you are 100% perfect Buddha, as in Buddha's life. Relative reality will manifest, but it's not necessarily samsara. It's only samsara for as long as we are possessed by it. We're in its grip, where it can get us. So the point of those 6 examples is absolutely valid. What we need to do, really and truly, you and me, in our worldly lives, with lots of stuff and lots of people and things to do and things we can't get out of and so on, we need the inner cave, the inner forest, the inner retreat cell, That's possible. It's what we need to do. And it's a prerequisite for meditation. So it means that we do our best not to cut off people and situations and then leave our job and go into poverty or whatever. It means that we need to be less and less involved. We need to understand and see and witness and feel the power that people have over us, the power that objects have over us, the power that status, not necessarily big status, prime minister or boss of your company, or status, stat means standing. And there's this perfect English word, you're standing in the eyes of others. All of that, that's our samsara. And of course, if you turn this situation around, there are people who do go to retreat, who do go to solitude, who do find, wow. Remember like Paldabum in our song last week, you become like a mountain. You become like space. You become like the light of the sun. But then when you go back, or not back, but you go to situations that aren't in the beautiful solitude of the forest, can you keep it, or is it unbearable? So what we need to do is find the samsara inside. So the first part in our understanding of this verse is line 2, unmoved by the winds of everyday busyness. So that's all the teachings about finding solitude. Now, Tai Situpa, the present one, yes, he says, in this second line, Karmapa is saying, not being carried away. You've got another word. I've used possessed, taken over. He says carried away by the winds of ordinary thoughts. That is quite simple, he says. When you sit there and try to observe the nature of your mind, and then a thought comes, the thought can carry you away. You could daydream there forever. In fact, sitting there, meditating, is the most convenient time and situation for daydreaming. Ideal circumstances for daydreaming, sitting down on a cushion and trying to practice. So he says one might take a happy ride and spend all one's meditation hours just daydreaming all sorts of wonderful things. Karmapa's telling us, don't do that. So when we meditate, we do it very conscientiously. Now, the third line, let's go back now to the first line. And that's what the support document with the quotations is there for you to spend good time with outside this particular talk, to savor. Now, really, what's in the couple of pages I sent you, I think in the end there's 6 pages. Each quotation should be part of a several-week adventure, a quest, where you set out with your rucksack and there are supplies somewhere, and you follow the clues, and you end up, and maybe you uncover a little box under a tree, and then you find the quotation in it, and then your next 24 hours, you just sit there with that quotation. And then you go on to the next bit of the quest, and you have to look. And then maybe you find the next quotation carved on a rock, and you have to spend 24 hours with it. Each of those quotations comes from the enlightenment of a wonderfully enlightened master, and is a treasure of a teaching. One of those quotations could be enough for years to work on. So even though they're all packed together in 6 pages, please give them ultimate respect. So anyway, let me tell you what the present Tai Situpa says about this first line that we parked. The line itself, not adulterating meditation with conceptual striving or mentally created meditation. So Tai Situpa uses the word diluted. I use the word adulterating. To me, the Tibetan looks more like adulterating. He uses the word diluted. He says, I don't know, and he says, I don't know if I'm saying this correctly or not, but if you put water in the milk, it gets diluted, doesn't it? Mentally created meditation involves dualistic effort. When you're really observing the nature of mind, you just observe. It does not involve mentally created meditation. Now, this is very profound. If you are visualizing properly in the Vajrayana tradition, you are not creating something new, a new visualization. You're not kind of adding a Rolex watch to your guru's hand. If you're doing guru yoga or visualizing a Buddha, you're not doing something like that. You're not adding something. Whatever kind of meditation you're doing is a mental activity. It's a creation of your mind. The visualization is a thought. Thinking a particular prayer is also a thought. So if we compare that kind of meditation with the particular meditation that Jawa Karmapa is praying about here, then these more preliminary forms of meditation are mentally created. And even though we learn them from the lineage, they are still mentally created. And we have to work pretty hard to visualize. First the lotus, then the seed syllables, then the deity, then the fountain of nectar, all kinds of particulars. It's all created by mind. It doesn't just happen naturally up there for you. So it's considered on a subtle level to be a creation of the mind. But, this is the point he's making, since it is not your own invention, it is not considered the same as your own creation. And when we do a refuge tree, Bodhisattva, any of the deity practices, it's not considered the same as one's own creation, like an architect drawing a new plan for a new house. Vajrayana visualizations are not the same as architectural plans because they are from the lineage. You are following method according to the precise instructions of the lineage, which has blessing and confers transmission. And that makes a difference. So not diluted by the effort of mentally created meditation. So that's what he had to say. Now, when he said that, he was talking to an audience in the USA, I think, and lots of beginners, and he wanted to bring across some value from this verse. When we look at the 8th Tai Situpa's commentary, for people deep into practice already, then he says many things. Yeah, I won't bore you by digging through the papers to find it. But what he says is, first, he follows on, once you've gone to solitude, once you've withdrawn yourself from the triggers, then it is vital, no other way around it, that you do the preliminary practices. They're understood here. They are implicit. And in particular, he mentions the 4 special foundations. Now we're at the time of the 8th Tai Situpa. By his time, the foundations had already become 4 plus 4 plus 4. If we go back to Milarepa and Mapa and Gampopa's time, they didn't have foundations is Ngondro. Ngondro practice wasn't like it is today. There wasn't a more fixed idea of Ngondro. In those times, there was much more direct guru-disciple contact. The guru gives the disciple whatever practices, thoughts, contemplations they need in the guru's eyes to be ready. It could be anything. In Milarepa's case, it was building houses, for instance. There isn't a building house Ngondro in the lineage that everyone has to do, or you think that's part of the process. By the 8th Tai Situpa's time, various practices which are absolutely necessary for working with our relative reality, so that the relative reality, which is going to be there anyway, no matter what, does not become samsara, doesn't hook us in, doesn't possess us, doesn't carry us away. So he mentions particularly the refuge, prostrations, bodhicitta, the first one of the 4 special foundations. We need that to purify ourselves physically. We have so much harmful physical karma from the past. We need that more than anything else to cement our trust, our refuge, because as we go deeper into our mind and face everything that's in our history, and all the way mind can resist harmfully, negatively, we will need trust in the process, the Dharma, and in our lineage, and in the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, that they're really there. There's not as our creation, what Tai Situpa calls the architect's plan. They've always been there. They're here right now for all of us, if we can open to their help. Then we need bodhicitta. Without that loving, compassionate mind, none of the practice will really take us to enlightenment. It may bring worldly accomplishments, special powers. They're called the worldly siddhis, but not enlightenment, not freedom. Then we need vajrasattva to purify the heaviest past karmas. We need the mandala offering to transform our perception of relative reality, all of it into an offering to Dharma practice, every moment. And then we need Guru Yoga to start to feel the blessing of the lineage gurus, the lineage in our heart, in our mind. So 8th Tai Situpa says there's no way. Now, of course, a few people, I think 1 or 2 of you watching the YouTube in this coming week, have asked me about this. And they say, are the foundation practices absolutely necessary for everybody? No way around it? Well, that's what the texts say. There can be exceptions. That depends on you and your karma, and in particular your Dharma karma, how well you're connected through what you've done in past lives. But apart from the exceptions, the general rule is, it's so much wiser and it's so necessary to do the foundation practices and do them well, with good instruction, so that you are not just doing them mechanically but you're doing them properly, so the real meaning can come out and they can be fruitful. So then, as I said last week, what Mahamudra does in general, and what in this text commentary we find, is that it throws us in at the deep end. From the very beginning, we get a clue as to where we're going, what Mahamudra is as a result. And then we need to roll up our sleeves and do the hard work of the actual practice to get us there. Really do. So what we've got now, we've got this verse we're looking at, which is the overview of meditation in Mahamudra. Then after that, we get 6 verses, which will develop what's in this overview. There's 1 verse about shamatha practice, and then 1 verse about vipassana practice, insight practice, 1 verse about observing the nature of our mind, and then 1 verse about the great unity of shunyata and manifestation, and then 1 verse about experiences, meditation experiences, and then the 6th one is about realization. Those last 2, experiences and realization, are a topic that Tai Situpa has so often talked about in his teachings to Westerners. In Tibetan, experience is nyam, and realization is tok. When you've got tok, more and more tok, and when your tok is 100%, you're Buddha. Nyam are meditation experiences, and they can be anything. They're impermanent. They're created by causes and conditions. What you do with your mind, and so many causes and conditions, short term, long term, past life term, or they come and go. So we need to know the difference between nyam and tok is very, very important. Tok is the wisdom that comes and doesn't go away, and just gets better and better, clearer and clearer, brighter and brighter. So anyway, let's spend a couple of minutes with the support document I sent you. And so it starts with quotes from Karmapa, and it's in the section in Karmapa called the actual method of meditation. It says, one needs to do this according to the Mahamudra system of guidance. One lets the mind settle. One lets the mind settle. One lets the mind settle. Free from even the slightest mental effort. That was in line 1, you see. No contrivance to posit, negate, adopt, or reject. Posit, negate, previous verses. Can't say this is it, you can't say this is not it. Adopt or reject. So then we get Tilopa's famous quote, which is all over social media these days. Now, Tilopa's actual quote is almost untranslatable. It starts off in Tibetan. Mino misam misem. How to translate that? It's like don't mind, don't mind, don't mind in English. Of course, you can unpack it, and usually what you find is that people say, Tilopa said, well, he didn't, but anyway, Tilopa said, don't follow the past, don't anticipate the future, don't be in the present. That's the explanation. Tilopa used words like mind, think, contemplate, without talking about past, present, future in actual words. So I tried to do that as best I could in English to make it as concise in English as you can for Tilopa's very concise instruction. Do not ponder, do not think, do not be aware, do not cultivate, do not analyze. Leave mind to itself. Let it be. Leave mind to itself. So then, of course, based on a quotation, based on something you saw on the internet, you don't have a clue how to do this. This is why there is the pointing out we've looked at in the last 2 weeks, the pointing out from the Guru, the introduction to the Mahamudra way of meditating, where you sit with the Guru does it, and if you've been well enough prepared, like our students who are going to India with Tai Situpa in the past, that was 6 years of preparation. Then you get what this means, how to sit without mental contrivance. So in the unpacking of this, then if you go to page find it, never mind. It's in there somewhere. So you get the explanation, which is of those lines. Do not ponder, do not think, do not be aware. It's the 3 times. But what the explanation tells you is that the first one is about the past. So what you see on social media is don't dwell in the past, something like that. It's true, but when Tilopa was teaching this to Naropa, which is where these teachings, called the 6 nails sometimes, comes from, like 6, you nail it, people say nailed it, right? You nail down the meditation with 6 nails. 1, it's true, you don't dwell on the past, but it doesn't mean the past, like Ken, his past, his history. It only means the past as the previous moment that was just there in meditation. We're learning to be in the present. It's not so easy as it looks. I couldn't believe it once. It was in Paris at the time the 16th Karmapa went there. And I went to a Zen session because there was some dialogue with the Zen people. And so the master, all in black, very impressive, better not mention his name, don't want to get some bad karma, but sat there incredibly stern, and he said, "Be here now." And he had his eyes shut. Now, I have no idea what his here and now was once he, and he was there and then. But it's not that, okay? It's not that. It's here and now, whatever is here and now, this moment. And we stick, we're like glue. So when Tilopa says the past, it's whatever just happened in your practice as you're learning to sit in Mahamudra. Whether it was fascinating, whether it was horrible, whether it was psychological, it doesn't matter. Let go. We have to learn not to hold on to any moment, not even a fraction of a second's worth. It's gone. Of course, not to mention all of the past that we're not dragging into our meditation, but here it's very precise and it only means that. And then the same, don't anticipate the future. It doesn't mean don't daydream about what I'm going to do tomorrow or when the meditation session's finished or next year or next life. It means because of what's happening in this moment, the hope and fear hormones inside us are not anticipating, it's going to go this way, it's going to go that way, it's going to be nice, it's getting worse, this is going to turn into not even without the thoughts in your head. All of that being possessed by a concern for where it's going in the next second. We have to learn to recognize it and then to disempower it. You know, there's this practice called chut where you cut off. We literally need to, as soon as we feel ourselves sticking with the last moment, slice it off. As soon as we feel ourselves anticipating where our mind is going, cut it off. And then also in the present, any effort to kind of be, identify with what's happening in the now. What you'll find energetically, there's a kind of an involvement with it. It's very energetic, this level of meditation. We learn not to be in the present. It's quiet. And it comes and goes. And as we get better and better at it, the coming and going is more and more split second. But then the inner serenity is more and more constant as it comes and goes. And this dichotomy, this conundrum of absolute and relative dissolves away. So not the past moment, not the future moment, not this present moment. And then we are not analyzing. And analysis is a vital part of Buddhist practice. We're assuming you've done whatever needs to be done according to your guru's instructions in terms of analysis of yourself, of life, of everything. With analysis comes with labeling. And that's the, mustn't swear, that's the problem. That's the problem. Like it or not, our mind says words. It labels what's happening. It defines. It needs to define. We had this before. If we can't define, it's uncomfortable. We need to learn to recognize it happening and to not be involved with it. It's a demon that takes our mind. It's a spirit that the spirit of labeling possesses us. So we don't analyze or label what's happening. We are talking about a lifetime's work here, and you won't do this in 2 sessions. It goes very, very deep. The mind can be labeling so subtly, you don't even know it's there at first. And then don't engineer is the next thing. What does it say? Do not cultivate. We're not aiming for anything. A state. Mahamudra ought to be like this, ought to be like that. The only oughts are, here we have 5 things that we cut off, right? We ought to be doing that. Cutting off the relative reality grip, the demon, the possession, the carrying away. We have to do that, but we are not engineering a certain state so that we are, like getting into a yoga position. You might need to do some exercises, loosen up some muscles, and then gradually, you can end up in that wonderful knot. We're not trying to gradually get ourselves into Mahamudra. That's why we had to view it isn't an it, this something. And it's not nothing because it's the nature, the ta of everything. Each new, fresh, living moment that comes up. And we learn to be, to let be. So the last line, the last instruction, when we've stopped doing those 5 things, dwelling in the past, anticipating the future, being in the present, analyzing the present, trying to engineer the present, then we learn how to let it be. Let it be is beautiful 3 words. There are 3 English words that work. A translator's joy. You know, in English, when you say let it be, it means leave it. Let it be what it is. Let it be. Let it be, in which case it can be whatever manifests in the present moment. Let it be. But also it can be the it, which is the that, which is the ta, which is the true nature of mind. Shunyata. Whatever is being is interdependent, impermanent manifestation. We don't need those words anymore. We did those before. We understood that. Now, through our talk realization of that, we can just let the shunyata nature of everything be in each new moment. Join the dots. So I think we need to stop there with this overview verse on Mahamudra meditation, but then now some of the things I've said will be developed in the 6 verses which come. So today, what we'll do, we'll do our dedication prayer, as we normally do, and then we'll spend a few minutes in silent prayer, or you can do your own prayer, for our friend and Dharma sister Ini, and I'll put a picture of her on the screen. And so she passed away on yesterday, and she had her accident on Thursday where she was unconscious. So whether she's still in the blackout phase after death, most likely. And then what we are praying is that when her mind emerges, that she recognizes the nature of mind and dissolves into the infinite, most beautiful blessing of all the Buddhas. So when we've done the dedication in your own way, please wish that on her, and that as Dharma brothers and sisters, we meet again and again in good circumstances in future lives to help each other along the path in whichever way we can. Thank you. Sonam diye tamche zikpane, tobne nyepe dranam pamchene, je ganachi palap krukpaye, tsipe tsole rowa rowarisho, janchub semcho rinpoche, maje panam jejo chik, jepa nyampa me patam, kongme kongdu pawarisho, gewadi in yoduda, jaja chempo drupjon. Over to you. I don't know if you've got any questions or something you'd like to add.
Hi, Ken.
Hi, Chris.
Thanks for that update about Ini. I didn't know that. That's, yeah, really sad. It's quite a blow.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you. And thanks for your teachings today, Ken. I'm about to go out on the water and catch some impermanent waves. So yeah, it'll be good medicine, I think. Thanks for that.
Okay. Have a good time, Chris.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome, David.
Can I ask about the role of the 4 special preliminary practices in this? I think you said that these were a prerequisite, but on the other hand, I do know from others that the challenge of completing these in this life is quite a big one. what
There isn't really. We won't complete them. Somebody might complete the numbers, but it means nothing. It means something, but it doesn't mean a lot. There is a point to each of the preliminaries, the foundations, and an essential part of the work that they do needs to be done. Now, for instance, Vajrasattva practice purifies past karma. If somebody does it, what we call successfully, they'll have dreams, very special dreams. And in those dreams are signs that the karma that could in this life be a real obstacle to our practice has been dealt with, but will be dealing with difficult karma for lifetimes to come, no matter if you're practicing Mahamudra, if you're a Bodhisattva or whatever. As I said so often, because it's so strikingly true, even Buddha in his last life, after 3 cosmic eons of hundreds, thousands of lives on the path, still had karma to deal with. So there's no way we're going to finish Vajrasattva in this life. I mean, if you can, wonderful, please do. But the odds aren't good. But we do need to do enough. It's like with refuge. You can't really take refuge till you know what Buddha is, and you'll only really start knowing what Buddha is when you get to first Bodhisattva level, and the nature of mind has become your default state. But we need to take, many teachers say, even 9th, 10th level Bodhisattvas, they still have more to discover about the extent of Buddha mind and the meaning of refuge. But we need to take a refuge enough so that when we face violent obstacles to our practice, and we could lose faith in the process, in everything, that we have enough trust to hang on in, and we make it through. What happens is our jealousy, our desire, our lust, whatever it is, they have such a grip on the mind that they make us project onto a reality in all sorts of ways where we find fault in other. One of the first of the quotations that I was going to do today, we'll do it next time, key quotations, is to stop finding fault in other. So we need enough refuge that we can stick with our path through our own psychological facing, our needs, our self-pity, whatever it is. So it is possible, and it's nothing to do with numbers. We need to do the practices properly to understand why they're there, and there are usually signs that they've worked. For the teacher will see signs in you that they've worked. And I must share you the story, for instance, with Vajrasattva, about a guy 74, 75 in Samiling. At the time, we had a few small retreat huts by the river, and he'd finished his prostrations, and he came into the office and saw Akon Rinpoche. He got the permission and instructions for doing Vajrasattva. So he was in the hut by the river, but everyone, all of us, Samiling, could hear him all day long because he was very loud and he had the bell, like this, very, very loud. And he finished in record time. So I was there when he came into the office, very happy because he was in retreat, but he was allowed to come when he'd finished until Akon Rinpoche. And rather than getting a smile, Akon Rinpoche looked so rough, and he said, no. He said, you need to go back and do it again. All of it, yes. So second time round, he was much quieter. If you were passing by the hut, you could hear him inside doing it. He took a bit more time. And we're all very, very interested because everyone knew that he'd been sent back to do it again. And we're all in our foundation practices. So I was there also the second time he came to see Akon Rinpoche when he'd finished. He was quite nervous then. And so then Rinpoche said to him,
go back and do it again.
You still need to go back. It's not, you haven't done enough yet. And so he says, but to do another 100,000, then Rinpoche said, I will tell you when. So now it's indefinite Vajrasattva until he gets, so he did another 30,000 or so. And Rinpoche sent me down to tell him, okay, you can stop now. You can come and get the instructions. So there, nobody heard anything. He was quiet, and what I'm sure Rinpoche saw him in between and kind of conveyed to him what needed to be done. So it's not a question of numbers. It's a question of quality, and that there's enough movement forward that the practice has done what it needs to do to prepare you for actual Mahamudra. You're welcome.
I would have just one.
Yes, hello, Renate.
Yeah. Just the only question would be, can it be that the moving mind can be Buddha mind as well? When
Yes.
it's in, so the thoughts are not, can be Buddha mind thoughts.
No. Buddha means awakened. Your mind can be awakened to its truth, even though what people call thoughts, like jealous thoughts, let's take those as an example. The jealous thoughts may be there, but not only through our work have we disempowered them, so they can't make us say something, do something, or buy into them, where we own them as my thoughts, where we feel jealous, I feel jealous about this person. We are now practicing Mahamudra. We have Buddha mind, awakened mind, not fully 100%, but nevertheless. So our mind is serene, blessed by the lineage, with the feeling of our Guru's blessing. And the jealous thought is there, and it comes and it goes. It's a jealous thought, but in no way does it grip us, have us, and it becomes what my teacher called the beauty of the mind, because you're seeing the nature of Buddha. You're feeling the feeling of blessing. You're feeling the great love of Buddhas for all beings through the doorway of recognizing the nature of the jealous thought. Now, this is why no words can describe Mahamudra. No words can tell you what that's like, but it's what happens. It's what happens. And it's why even in the Bodhisattva path, we welcome historical negativity in our mind. We don't let it take us over, but we welcome it as a material to transform. So on the Bodhisattva path, we're gradually working on it, transforming hatred into love and jealousy into an appreciation of others and so on. Gradually, in the Mahamudra path, in the very instant, this living instant, that the thought is there, we're recognizing the pure nature of mind because of it. It's like our ticket to the true nature of mind. And no words can describe that, but it's the truth of the matter. And it's why it says there is nothing to reject. And we need to come back to this in the verses that come up. Right? I hope that helps. And see, it's the problem of language, because I have to say, you are serene, while a jealous thought is there, as though they are two things. But what we get in the fourth of these 6 verses is about the unity, the spontaneous, the not two. Unity means not two. There's not serenity and something nasty on the surface. Impossible to describe, but it's what happens. We need
Buddha mind and samsaric mind.
Buddha mind
together.
And Buddha mind and what was samsaric manifestation. But if it doesn't get us anymore, it doesn't make us do anything, then we can't call it samsara anymore. And that's what we'll look at. We'll look at next week. That's what the quotes in the support document we sent out were about. Samsara is when you're caught up in it. Nirvana is when you are not caught up in it, you're free from it. And all of that is this thinking mind which defines what's going on. And when we reach Mahamudra, we are beyond all that. It's there, but we are totally beyond it. Words can't describe. Words can't make it happen. Okay. I think maybe we're finished for today. Thank you all very, very much, and go well, have a good week. And if you're watching this on YouTube because you had a problem connecting up, then I'm sorry about that, and I'll try and sort it out one way or the other. It might involve sending out a new link to everybody, I'm not sure. Anyway, we'll see. Okay then, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Thank you. Bye.
Merci. Thank you, Ken. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ken.
Draw now.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you.